Before we talk about the moment the hotel owner stepped in and changed everything, let's talk about how it all started. It was supposed to be a peaceful evening. A black family had just arrived at a luxury hotel, excited for their vacation. But someone didn't think they belonged there. Her name? Karen. The moment she saw them walk through the lobby, she felt the need to intervene. She assumed they were trespassers, not guests. She didn't ask questions. She didn't think twice. Instead, she called security. Then, she called the police. Minutes later, sirens blared outside, officers rushing into the hotel. The family, confused and embarrassed, had no idea why they were being confronted. Karen stood there, arms crossed, smug. She thought she had won, but she didn't know who was about to walk through that door. Before we talk about the moment everything changed, let's meet the people at the center of this story. First, there's Karen. Entitled, arrogant, and convinced she is always right. She believes she has the authority to decide who belongs where. To her, appearances are everything. And when she sees a black family checking into an upscale hotel, she assumes the worst. Then, there's the black family, a married couple with their two kids. They are successful, well-educated, and simply looking forward to a relaxing trip. They worked hard to afford this vacation, yet now they are being treated like criminals in a place they paid to be. And then there's the hotel owner, a powerful figure, respected by his employees. He built this hotel from the ground up and values his guests above all else. He believes in fairness, respect, and hospitality, but most importantly, he does not tolerate discrimination. These three people are about to collide in a way that Karen never expected. Before we talk about the moment Karen's confidence shattered, let's talk about what led to the police being called. The black family had just finished checking in. The father handed his credit card to the receptionist, who welcomed them warmly. Their bags were already being taken upstairs, and their children were excited about the trip. But then, Karen saw them. She watched them from across the lobby, her eyes narrowing. She whispered to another guest, shaking her head. "There's no way they're guests here," she muttered. She marched over to the front desk. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp. "Are you sure they're supposed to be here?" The receptionist frowned. "Yes, ma'am, they just checked in." Karen scoffed. "I don't believe that. People like that don't stay at places like this." The receptionist stiffened. "Ma'am, please." Karen cut her off. "I want security here. Now." Moments later, two hotel security guards arrived. Karen pointed at the family. "They don't belong here," she insisted. "I saw them walk in, and I'm pretty sure they're sneaking around." The father turned, confusion on his face. "Excuse me?" Karen folded her arms. "You need to prove that you have a reservation." The mother sighed, pulling out the confirmation email on her phone. "Here." Karen barely glanced at it. "That could be fake." Then she pulled out her phone and called the police. "This is an emergency," she said into the phone. "There's a group of trespassers at the Grand Royale Hotel." She smirked as she ended the call. In her mind, this was already over. Before we talk about the moment the hotel owner entered, let's talk about what happened when the police showed up. It didn't take long. Sirens wailed outside, red and blue lights flashing against the hotel windows. 4 officers rushed inside. Karen stepped forward, her smile growing. "Thank goodness you're here," she said. "They were acting suspicious, and I just knew something wasn't right." The lead officer turned toward the family. "Do you have any identification?" The father sighed. He had seen this scenario play out too many times before. He handed over his ID and hotel confirmation. The officer looked it over, confused. Karen raised an eyebrow. "Well, arrest them." The officer's expression shifted. "Ma'am, this is valid." Karen's smile faltered. "That can't be right." Another officer checked with the receptionist, who confirmed everything was in order. Karen's face turned red. Well, how do we know they didn't steal it? The father's jaw tightened. Are you serious? The police hesitated. They could see what was happening, but before they could do anything, a voice echoed from behind them. What is going on here? Everyone froze, because standing at the entrance, looking furious, was the hotel owner himself. Before we talk about the moment Karen realized she had just made the biggest mistake of her life, let's talk about what the hotel owner did next. He walked forward, his sharp eyes scanning the room. His employees were silent. The police officers shifted uncomfortably. The Black family looked exhausted. And then, his gaze landed on Karen. What, he said slowly, is happening here? Karen straightened up. I had to call the police. These people were acting suspicious, and I knew something was wrong. The owner turned to the family. You are guests here? The father nodded. Yes, we checked in earlier. We showed proof, but she wouldn't accept it. The owner took a deep breath, then turned back to Karen. Are you a member of my staff? He asked. Karen frowned. What? Do you work for me? Karen stammered. No, but... Then what gives you the right to question who stays in my hotel? Karen's face went pale. Before we talk about the moment Karen realized there were real consequences for her actions, let's talk about what happened next. The hotel owner stood there, his sharp gaze locked onto Karen. The tension in the room was thick, and for the first time that night, Karen looked nervous. She let out a forced laugh. I was just trying to help. You wouldn't want people sneaking around your hotel, would you? The owner's expression didn't change. Sneaking around? They checked in like every other guest. They provided ID. They paid for their stay. The only person causing a problem here is you. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. The owner turned to the police. Officers, do these guests have any outstanding issues? The lead officer shook his head. No, sir. Their reservation is legitimate. The owner nodded. Then he turned to the hotel receptionist. Did this woman complain before they arrived? The receptionist swallowed hard. No, sir. The owner's jaw tightened. Then he turned back to Karen. So let me get this straight, he said. You saw a Black family in a luxury hotel, assumed they weren't supposed to be here, and called the police on them? Karen's face turned a deeper shade of red. I just thought... You thought what? The owner's voice was sharp. That they didn't belong here? That they weren't good enough for this place? Karen crossed her arms. I was looking out for the safety of the hotel. The owner shook his head in disbelief. This hotel doesn't need you to look out for it. You are not security. You do not decide who stays here. Karen glared at him. You're really defending them? The owner took a deep breath. Let me make one thing very clear. This family is welcome here. You are not. Karen froze. What? You are banned from this hotel, the owner said firmly. I don't allow discrimination in my establishment. Karen's jaw dropped. You can't do that. Oh, but I can. The owner gestured to security. Escort her out. Karen shouted in protest, but security didn't hesitate. Within moments, she was being led out of the hotel, her face burning with humiliation. And just like that, the power she thought she had was gone. Before we talk about the moment the Black family realized just how much support they had, let's talk about what happened after Karen was removed from the hotel. The owner turned back to the family. His expression softened. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that, he said. This is not how we treat our guests. The father nodded. We appreciate that, sir. The owner took out his phone and made a call. Within minutes, hotel staff arrived with complimentary drinks, upgraded room keys, and an apology letter. Your stay is fully covered, the owner said, and if you need anything at all, don't hesitate to ask. The mother smiled. Thank you, but honestly, all we wanted was to be treated fairly. The owner sighed. That should have never been in question. Meanwhile, the police officers remained standing awkwardly. The lead officer finally cleared his throat. We're really sorry for what happened here, he said. We'll file a report on the incident. The father nodded but said nothing. As the family made their way to their upgraded suite, a hotel guest approached them. I saw what happened, she said. That was disgusting. Another guest stepped forward. No one should have to go through that. One by one, hotel guests began apologizing, showing their support, and condemning Karen's actions. For the family, it was a moment of both frustration and relief. Frustration that this had happened in the first place. Relief that people had stood up for what was right. Before we end this story, let's talk about the lesson behind it all. Karen thought she had power. She thought her assumptions, her privilege, and her loud voice would be enough to remove a family from a space they rightfully belonged in. But power doesn't come from making others feel small. True power comes from integrity, fairness, and respect. The Black family did nothing wrong, yet they were treated like criminals. Karen, on the other hand, was so blinded by prejudice that she never stopped to consider that maybe, just maybe, she was the problem. The hotel owner didn't hesitate. He didn't try to keep the peace or brush things under the rug. He took action. And that's the real takeaway. Racism and discrimination have no place in any space. When you see injustice, don't stay silent. Speak up. The world doesn't belong to just one type of person. It belongs to all of us. Karen thought she had control, but in the end, she had nothing. And the Black family? They walked away with something far more valuable than just a free hotel stay: justice, dignity, and the knowledge that good people still exist.